All right, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. All right, so when I'm talking today, if you've got questions, feel free to interrupt me with questions because really I want to make sure I'm answering what you want to know about as far as judging in the American Advertising Awards. Plus, if you don't ask me questions, that means I talk for like 45 minutes straight and I get really bored. And so I start just making crap up, and we don't want that. So feel free to ask questions as we go. Before we get started, a couple disclaimers. One, I will contradict myself because there's no absolutes on anything here. There may be a few things I say that surprise you, maybe even piss you off. If that's the case, feel free to yell at me after the fact. And then the last thing is, as I mentioned, feel free to ask me questions. But let's be careful not to ask me super specific questions that apply only to you. You know, try to ask a little more general questions. Otherwise, the super specific questions, I'm happy to answer afterwards. I'm happy to stick around as long as you want me to afterwards to talk. Or you can just run me out of the room, whatever works best for you. All right, so Andy told you about me. You know, I've been on the district board. I'm on the central region board. I've been on the national ADDY committee as well. So I've been a judge. I've helped run shows. I've helped write rules and things like that. So I have a pretty well-rounded perspective as far as awards and judging and how those go. And really my goal here and what I want to talk to you about today is how you have a better chance at winning awards because you know how the judging works, you know how all that kind of stuff works. Any little advantage we can give you, that's what I want to make sure we have happen today. So obviously we're mostly talking about the American Advertising Awards. So a couple things I want to talk about with this. You may not know this, hopefully you do. So the whole point of the American Advertising Awards is to recognize creative excellence. It's not about results, it's not about strategy, it's not about any of those other things. This award show is specifically about creative excellence, and we'll talk about that a little more later. But that's something good to have in mind as you look at what you're going to enter into the competition. So nationally, we have about 40,000 entries into the American Advertising Awards. And we've got about 180 chapters. So on average, that's 225 entries per chapter. So that gives you kind of a feel of how big this show is, 40,000. Now, the thing that makes this different about other award shows is the 3 tiers. How many people were aware that it's a 3-tier system? Local, district, net? Good, good. So once you win at local, the golds and the silvers can go on to district, and then the golds and silvers from district can go on to national. That number right there is your odds of winning a national gold award. That's a pretty low percentage, but if you think about 40,000 entries in the beginning, only 0.03% win a national gold. So it's a pretty big deal to win a national gold. Now the nice thing is I have gotten to walk up on stage and pick up a national gold for a friend of mine who couldn't be there. But hey, I got to do it. Everyone congratulated me. I was good with that, you know. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about judging, because usually what it comes down to, most people's questions about the ADDYs, I'm going to say the ADDYs instead of the American Advertising Awards because it'll take half my talk just to say the American Advertising Awards 20 times. So the thing about the thing people most, sorry, I'll try that again. Where people have their most questions is about the judging. How are things judged? How do you decide what a winner is? How do you determine if it's the right category? So those are some of the kinds of things I want to cover. So let me tell you a few truths about judging, because you'll want to keep these in mind as you're deciding what to enter. Any copywriters in here? If you are, any copywriters, raise your hand. All right, I got really bad news for you. During judging, we don't have time to read. If we're looking at, like for instance, Des Moines, you have about 225 entries normally. We don't have time to read, so we're not going to read everything that's on the table. Now, if it appeals to us, you know, if we like what it looks like concept-wise, design-wise, then we're going to read it to see if we like it. But if the whole point of your entry is the copywriting, it's probably not going to get read unless the rest of it catches our attention. So keep that in mind. The only place where we will stop and specifically read the copywriting is in the copywriting category. Otherwise, we have to skip over most of it. And usually what happens is we're skimming. We do some quick skimming. What are they trying to say? Are they getting the point across? Now, if we really like it, we're going to read it. But keep that in mind. We don't have time to read because we have so many things to get through. If it's confusing, we score it low. Yes, that is the truth. If you confuse us, we're like 60, move on to the next one. By the way, most places scoring is 0 to 100, and about a 90 gets you a gold, about an 80 gets you a silver, so obviously a 60 is not something you want us giving you. But if it's confusing, if we can't figure it out, we'll give it a low score and move on. So something that's really cool, if you haven't made it easy for us to understand it, might not do as well for that very reason. And we'll talk about that in a little while and how to make it easier for us to get through the confusing entries that you've got. How many people are surprised by that fact? How many people are like, F you, Kevin, for telling us that? It's okay, I don't mind. All right, now, I'm sure most of you know this, but not every category has a winner. I know some people who have a strategy of, you know what? We're going to enter something in the newsletter category because only 2 people enter, so we can win something. That's not how it works. While we are judging things against a category, we're still judging things against everything. So, because here's what you don't want. You don't want some crappy postcard winning an award because it's the only thing that's in that category, for example. Whereas you have some categories like integrated or posters where you might have several things that should win. So it's based on the overall quality of it, not the, we do the judging based on the category it's in, but that doesn't mean it necessarily gets an award. I mean, you guys handed out, I believe, 17 gold awards last year. Well, there are 100 categories, so that tells you right there, you can't make that happen. And this is the bad news for some people. We don't care about results. I know that sounds bad, but we don't care about results. We are here to judge the creativity of the awards. That's what the American Advertising Awards is about, is the creativity. So you can have great results. You don't have any way to tell us. It's not like some of the other categories, like PRSA. You have to write up what the results are, and it's all very results driven. Here it's creativity driven. So you might increase their business by 10,000%. Doesn't matter. You might have totally bombed and driven them out of business, but if it looks good creatively, it can win an award because it's strictly about creativity. Now, there are ways around that, and we'll talk about that in a little while too. So if you've got incredible results, there is a way on some categories to work that in. And we don't take strategy into account because we have no way to know what the strategy is. Sometimes we can look at something and we figure out, oh, they're trying to reach this group of people by doing it this way. Some of those things are obvious. If it's not obvious, keep in mind, as judges, we don't have any information other than what's laying in front of us, which is no different than how the audience is receiving everything. They don't receive something and think, oh, I'm 18 to 20, okay, I'm not 18 to 27. I'm over 30, let's go with that. I'm over 30, they're obviously steering this towards me because they're doing it this way. No, they don't know that, and we don't know that. We can only judge by what's in front of us. In fact, we're not supposed to ask questions of the volunteers during judging because it's not fair. Because imagine if someone from your agency happens to be a volunteer there, they can answer the questions. What if you don't have a volunteer there? They can't answer the questions. So we're not allowed to ask questions of the volunteers as far as how was this used, what was it for, because it can give an unfair advantage to someone. So all we can do is judge what's right in front of us. Sometimes the strategy is obvious, and when it is, that actually helps. Just like sometimes the results are obvious. Those always help, but know that that's not what we can judge things on. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, and then when I'm judging, sometimes I randomly pick something up and light it on fire just to send a message. Okay, see, that's how I entertain myself, so keep that in mind as we go. And here's one that I think surprises most people. The volunteers during judging actually affect the results. Now, hopefully they affect them in a positive way. And what I mean by that is it organized? You know, are we sitting around waiting for things to be set out, or are we constantly judging? What you don't want is for the judges to get off their track. You know, you don't want it to be that they're judging and then they have to sit for an hour while they're waiting for something, because then they get off their rhythm as far as judging goes. So your volunteers make a difference. So is anyone here a volunteer for the AAAs? I know we have the chair. Yes, absolutely. So make sure someone's picking them up at the airport and they're there on time. Make sure they're checking them into the hotel. Make sure that they've got their food that they need and things like that. Because judges are a bunch of crybabies. We are. But I want you to think about it this way. The judge has probably taken 2 days off of work to be there. They're giving up their weekend, because usually we're traveling on a Thursday, judging on a Friday and a Saturday, leaving on a Sunday. So we're giving up 4 days of our time for nothing. What you want us is focused on judging. You don't want us worrying about getting to our hotel. You don't want us worrying about where we're going to eat. You want our whole time to be focused on judging. You take care of that, that will make a difference in how they judge things. All right, so here's a basic breakdown. Because I mentioned earlier, not every category wins. And not everyone knows about what the breakdown comes to. So even with the scoring, I mentioned that a gold, usually that's about a 90 or above, silver's a 60 or above. That's just our starting point. When it comes to golds, the top 8 to 10% win. Silvers are the next 10 to 12% as far as what's going on. So as you can see there, at best, 22% of entries get awards. So you're probably talking 1 in 5. So if you're entering 10 things, you might get 2 awards, and that's not bad. So keep that in mind as you're looking at the numbers, because the awards are about recognizing creative excellence. We don't want to give everyone an award. Now, I ran the numbers on what Des Moines gave last year as far as golds and silvers, and you fall right within both of those numbers. You guys are right where you should be as far as how many awards you're giving out. So keep in mind that, you know, it's 1 in 5 that wins. So as you're looking at it, so if you enter 4, you might not win any. You might win 4, but, you know, that's beside the point. But that gives you kind of a breakdown on how those numbers work. All right, so I talked about the truths about judging. Let's talk about the truth about judges. There's a lot more to this, because these are things to keep in mind as they're judging. Because a lot of times, you know, you saw the title was, what's wrong with those judges that should have won an ADDY? Well, a lot of things go into judging, and judges are people. So first thing is, judges get irritated. They get irritated if there's no one there to pick them up. They get irritated if they have to find the hotel. Things like that. So you want to take care of the judges. And I don't mean baby them. Give us drinks, you know, whatever works. Yeah, get us drunk and then let us judge. That's really smart. But we get irritated, but here's what usually irritates us: when we're confused, when we don't understand why something's in a certain category, when we don't understand what something is supposed to do. Because like there are times, as I mentioned earlier, we're not allowed to ask the volunteers questions about the entries. We have to judge the entry based on what's in front of us. And we're not supposed to ask each other questions either. Because you don't want one judge reading it wrong and then biasing all the other judges against a piece or for a piece. That's why we try to keep this very steady as far as each judge judges alone until it's time to judge best up. That's when we get to talk. That's when we get to debate things and stuff like that. So if we get confused, it's hard to judge something. And you saw what I said earlier. If we get confused, if we don't understand something, we have a tendency to rate it low. So where you're in the biggest danger is in complicated projects and projects that have a lot of little pieces. And one of the bigger ones is in the, man, I just blanked on the word, integrated. I couldn't think of the word integrated. Some of the integrated ones. So do your best to make sure everything's clear. We'll talk about that in a second too, as far as how to do that. Some more truths about judges. Judges don't agree. We don't agree on things. You might have 2 judges give something a 90 and another one give it a 65. That happens, but that's the nice thing about having a panel of judges, and that's the reason we have 3 judges here, for example, at the show. They always weigh each other out, so they'll always make that work. But we don't always agree, but we all give it a score, and then the score is averaged to determine, does it get gold, does it give silver? And as long as all the judges are consistent in how they judge, It's okay if one judges something lower. We all have our biases. Every judge has a bias. That's part of the reason you don't want the same judges every year, because you don't want the same bias every year. What if they have a bias against the kind of work you do? Great, now they're here every year and they're gonna have that same bias. So you wanna be careful. That's also why we try to mix up the judges. For instance, I'm a art director, creative director, so usually I'm judging with writers, a video person, a photographer, things like that. So you're always trying to mix it up so that me as an art director, I'm not biasing the judging just towards what looks good. We're also looking at content and concept and things like that. There's always one a-hole. Who's worked with judges before? Am I right? There's always one a-hole? Uh-huh. Hopefully I'm not that guy. I mean, I'll be honest. Because usually I'm like, which one's the a-hole? Oh, it better not be me. But usually that's the person who is harder on things. You know, it's like what I said earlier. You might have a judge that judges everything really hard or really low. That's okay, because with a panel of judges, as long as they're consistent, that evens it out. It evens out all the scoring. And then since we do it by top 8%, then the top 12%, or however that works, it's always going to balance out. So if you got a judge that judges consistently low, that's okay. We had a judge once in Kansas City. We score up to 100. I was grabbing her sheets from her, and I was seeing 10s and 20s. I'd see a 30 once in a while. The other judges were giving 70s, 80s, 90s. And luckily we had 5 judges there, but it was one of those things where it was okay because it balanced out. Of course, we called her dirty names behind her back and, you know, made her take a cab to the airport, things like that, you know, just to pay it back. But there's always one judge like that. But it always balances out based on the other judges. Any questions so far? I could make something else up too. Yes, there you go. He saved you. Everyone think, what's your name?
Adam.
Adam, everyone think Adam, because otherwise I would have made something up.
How do you determine who gets to be a judge? I mean, is it always creative people, or do you have people from the account side or not creative?
That's a great question. So Adam asked, how do we determine judges? And really every chapter does it differently. But for the most part, determining judges, you want to mix. So you always want, usually it comes out to a couple of designers, a writer, mostly because you have a lot more designers than writers. But it's good to mix someone else in if you can. You know, we've mixed in print buyers before, we've mixed in photographers, videographers. You want to mix. You don't want everyone, let me put it this way. You don't want a room full of white art directors from the Midwest who work in design firms. You want to mix it up. By the way, that would have been me in that, so in case you couldn't figure that out. So we try to mix them up, but also we're looking for what kind of qualifications do they have? Have they judged at other shows? Do they win awards? Things like that. So we have a tendency to call around for people. Like for me, when I'm looking in Kansas City, we have about 1,000 entries. I'll look, and I'm looking for people who've judged communication arts or things like that. So we're looking for people who've judged larger shows. So it's really the criteria that your individual chapter sets. One of the main ones is that it has to be someone outside the district, and you're all in District 9, so that's Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, and Kansas. So you want someone outside that district because you don't want them to know the work. And the more important one is you want someone who has never worked in that district. You don't want someone who will know the agencies or the work, because you don't want someone who will go, oh, so-and-so did that, my friends work there, and all of a sudden you get a slightly higher score. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Adam. Thanks for not making me make something up, because I didn't have anything else ready to go. All right, the truth about judges some more. You know how I said judges aren't supposed to talk and ask each other questions and stuff like that? We do. We do. We do it behind the scenes. We do it when the volunteers not around. If you're in charge, because you're in charge, right? Yeah, watch the judges, because they will be like, what'd you think of this? What'd you think of that? But we try not to do it until after we've judged something. Because part of it is we want to, here's the thing, if the judges are talking about your work, that's a good sign. The last thing you want is judges not to say anything about your work. It's just not going to get anything. So it's good that the judges talk, and that's okay. But know that we are talking about the work, we are asking each other questions, each other's opinions. That's good because then that comes up when we're talking best ofs and things like that. So don't worry about them talking too much. Just know they do it. And here's a big one. Judges don't know who won last year or who care, or care that who won last year. The thing is, sometimes what I'll hear is, they've won Best of Show 3 years in a row. The judges don't know that. They've never seen the work before. They don't know who's won. So keep that in mind. So if you have like repeat winners, that's why you got a new set of judges. And actually that should confirm that that's really good work if it's a continuing thing. We had a project in Kansas City, Sonic, the commercials for Sonic, the two guys that are always talking. They won like Best of Show 4 years in a row and people were getting pissed off. And I just said, well, if you're tired of them winning Best of Show 4 years in a row, do better work. Knock them off. We got different judges that keep saying that's the best work, so know that that's what it is. We don't know or care what won before. So we're judging with a clean slate, and that's exactly what you want happening. You don't want anything biased in their favor towards winning or maybe towards not winning. And this is very true. Different judges can deliver very different results. You get a different group of judges in there, you're going to have different stuff. I'm going to say that 85%, by the way, that's a completely made up number. I have nothing to back that up. But it sounds right to me. But about 85% of your results will be the same with different judges. Usually where you're going to have changes is those ones that were lower gold, upper silver might switch, and some of the ones that didn't quite make silver might make silver. That's usually where your changes are. But for the most part, you'll get those same results. But when it moves on to something like district, you have a whole different set of judges looking at it, and you have different competition. So while it might not have been as strong in your local one, it might actually be stronger in district. That does happen based on the overall. And then the same goes on to national as well. So one thing is, all right, if you win a silver at local, you can forward it at your own cost to district. I highly recommend you do that, because I've seen silvers at locals win golds at district, because you got a different competition, different set of judges. You know, the comment I made earlier about I got to go and pick up a friend of mine's gold at nationals. He won silver at local, silver at district, gold at nationals. Just a different set of judges and how they respond to it. Laura, did you have a question?
Yeah, just talk more about district judging a little bit. How does that work again?
Okay. Are you all familiar with district judging? How we do that? So what happens is with district judging, like I said, you're District 9, the 4-state region. So we have 11, excuse me, choke on my own spit. That's not real cool. That'd be great, because it's even being videotaped. That'd be great, me passing out. All right, so moving on. So judging at district, so we have the 11 chapters. We got Lincoln, Omaha, Kansas City, St. Louis. We got Cedar Valley, Cedar Rapids, Dubuque, Joplin. Did I say Southeast? Missouri, we got Topeka. I think I hit them all. And of course, Des Moines. But all 11 forward up to districts. And so then we have a whole new set of judges that we fly in, and they will judge against all of those. So in those winners, the percentages are about the same. 8% or so get gold, 10% after that get silver, right within that range. So if you do have a silver at local, the golds are automatically forwarded. But if you have a silver, please pay to forward it, because to forward it to district, for example, is only $55. But like I said, Brendan got a silver, then a gold at national, and it's been huge for him. So make sure to take advantage of that. All right, so any questions about what I've said? The truth about judging, the truth of judges. How we, oh, we're good on time. Any questions? Oh, Laura?
Sorry.
Yes. No, that's okay.
How do you judge interactive compared to the print?
How do we judge interactive compared to the print? That's a great question. One, we judge interactive. Most places we judge it in advance. So like a week before, like let's say I was coming to judge here, a week before I would get all the interactive links so that I could judge those at my own computer, at my own desk, you know, so I can experience them the way someone else would. Plus that gets us further into the process. Some of the smaller, I've judged a few where we do interactive there, but that allows us to spend more time with the interactive entries because they too take a little more to figure out. And you don't want us under pressure because then we get confused, we score it low, we cry like babies, you know, and you don't want any of that kind of stuff. So we do the interactive ahead of time for the most part. And then one of the things I always do for interactive is, since that's the only thing I've seen, I put my scores in, but we always reserve the right to go back and change them. Because sometimes what happens is, like when I first get to judging, the first thing I do, I walk the room to see what's out on the table because I want an overall sense of what kind of work is in there. Well, sometimes the interactive is stronger than that work I'm going to see. Sometimes it's not as strong. So I want to make sure I'm adjusting my scoring based on that. I don't want to screw interactive or give it too high a score. So sometimes I'll go in and change some of my scores, for example. But you want to make sure you get an overall feel as far as what you're doing. So let's talk about how to increase your chances of winning. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. And what I mean by that, keep it simple for the volunteers to set up. If you've got things that need to be put together, put them together and enter it that way. We had one entrant who entered, I kid you not, it was like 60 different things, and they're all things that had to be put together. That was a lot of work to do. Plus, they don't necessarily know how to put it together. So put it together and enter it put together. Don't expect, know that the volunteers don't know your work either when they're setting things out on the table. So if it needs to be put together, make sure it's put together. Or give them instructions on how to do something because they're going through it quick. Volunteers don't have a lot of time to set things up. So don't assume that they're going to spend more than 30 seconds putting your stuff together. So make sure it's clear for the volunteers. Keep it simple for the judges to understand. You know, the thing is, sometimes people feel like if they throw a bunch of stuff in there, that makes it more impressive. Not necessarily. Keep it simple, make sure I'm getting the key things. Sometimes people are like, well, hey, as part of this thing, we had a BRC card. Let's put that in there. You really think a BRC is going to make the difference in you winning a silver or a gold? No, don't include that. Keep it simple. Keep the key things that are going to get you something. If there are 6 pieces to it, but 4 of them are stand out and 2 are kind of a pain or didn't come out as well, leave those out. We don't need to see the whole thing. Give us the best pieces and make sure that it's easy for us to understand. Oops. I pointed at the screen. I forget I have to point at the computer. Oh, please, enter the correct category. Now, I know that's a tough one. How many people are like, what category does this go in? Come on, be honest. All right. All right, the ones who didn't raise their hands must have someone else do the entries, because that's always a problem. So enter the correct category. That makes a big difference in how it's judged, because I told you that we judge with how it stands out within the category. And if a judge finds, why is this in this category? This should be in this. Then it's got to be moved around. It's likely to get lost in the shuffle. So make sure you've got it in the right category. But here's the other thing I'm going to say. When in doubt on which category it should go in, just get it entered. We'll move it around if we need to. It's more important that you get it entered, but don't just throw them all in. If you've got questions, can I say call Lisa? Yep. Okay. If you've got questions, I was waiting to see if I get the daggers back, like, you son of a... But call Lisa if you've got questions on what category it should be in. And if she doesn't know, she can call Laura. Laura, raise your hand. She's our district, that's why she could ask some of the questions. She's our district rep as far as the ADDYs go. So she can answer those questions, or she can call me as well. Because we get that all the time. I can't tell you how many calls I take around December where it's like, what category should this be in? Because it's such a specific thing. And sometimes we're like, let's try it here. Main thing is to get it in, but let's make sure you've got it in the correct category. Make sure you've got it in the correct category first. Oh, please, follow the rules. I did clean up that line, as you can see, because originally it had the word. But that's the big one for judges. When we see someone hasn't followed the rules, remember how I said the first thing about judges, we get irritated? That's what gets us irritated. And some of those rules, for example, here's some of the big ones that we see people break all the time. Okay, so for like an integrated thing, you can enter 10 things, and they enter 20 pieces. Well, by the time you set that out for judging, you've taken up a whole row of tables. And also, usually what we're supposed to do, if you enter 20 and you're only allowed to enter 10, we will randomly take out 10 pieces. We'll get it down to 10 because we have to judge fairly on each entry. Now here's the bad news on that. We might take out the 10 best pieces. You don't want volunteers deciding which pieces are going to be taken out. That's also true with a lot of the campaign things. If you look at the campaigns, for example, ad campaigns or photography campaigns, you're only supposed to enter 4 tops for the campaign. If you enter 6, we're going to pull 2. They might be the 2 pieces that made it the best it was. So make sure you enter the correct. Go ahead and read all the rules to make sure you're doing that. We're trying to make sure you've got the best chance at winning. So don't let us screw it up for you. Now, this is where we talk about strategy and results that we can't really. There are several categories where you're allowed to give a description. In the integrated, in logos, and in several others, you'll notice in the rules, and this is why you want to read the rules on each category, that you're allowed to do a 250-word description. So like for a logo, you can explain who it was for, what you were trying to do. For the integrated is where it's most important to do that. You can even do a digital. They'll allow you to do a digital thing where you can do a video that maybe walks someone through something. Or like events. Let's say you put on a big event, guerrilla marketing, any of those kinds of categories. You can do a digital explanation. Do those. Take advantage of those, because then that's also when you can tell us what you were trying to achieve, the results you've got. Now, if you're going to talk about results, if something went up 10%, something went up 25%, if it's like 400%, then we're going to be impressed. So make sure the results matter. Don't think about the results that you tell the clients. Well, the client goes, 12%, that's great. In judging, we go. So make sure the results are worth talking about. Now, you'll notice up on my nicely put together slide that the word concise is in all caps. Remember the first thing I told you, which was we don't have time to read? Keep it short. Don't give us the bullshit. Don't give us the talk you might give your clients. Sorry, let me correct that language there. Don't give us the talk you might give your clients. You want to make sure that just get straight to the point, because we don't have time to read. We're not going to read through all the marketing talk and things like that. This was for an event put on downtown. The logo was based on the arch that's in the middle of the city. Keep it that simple. Write to me like I'm a 7-year-old, because that's probably how I'm going to read it anyway. So keep it simple. Don't go into all the gobbledygook. Don't give me all these results. Well, we increased awareness by this and this, but yeah, don't tell me any of that stuff. Just get right to the point. And I probably spent 5 minutes saying be concise and get right to the point, didn't I? Nice job, Kev. All right, and here's a really important one. If it looks fake, include proof of use. Good example, we had a sex shop that did a bunch of ads. We had trouble believing they were really used. So they included some tear sheets so that we knew that those ads were really used. And then they want best to show, go figure. Double check all website addresses, because when we go to judge, if the website address is wrong, we've got nothing to judge and you get a 0. Also, make sure they're still live, because we've had websites where by the time we go to judge it, it's been taken down. We can't judge it. So double check, and then check it again before you enter it. Make sure it's going to be live. So if you know when judging is, what weekend is judging? The 11th of January or so? All right, so everyone on the 9th of January, go in and double check all your websites that you've entered to make sure they're still live. And make sure there's someone we can get a hold of during judging weekend, because if there's any problems, we will call. But if you don't answer, we can't do anything about it. So make sure someone is available. They don't have to know the answers, but they have to know how to get a hold of someone that knows the answers. All right, and a last little bit, and then we'll leave some time for questions and answers. Approach your entries like a client presentation. Sometimes I'm amazed at the way people will enter things, because I'm like, do you take this seriously as far as what's going on? So for example, do quality prints and executions. If you're going to turn in a logo that was done on a laser printer, I mean on a jet printer, it just isn't going to feel that professional and it won't score as well. So think about what you do when you're presenting to clients. Make sure it's that kind of quality, because think about it, we're looking at 200 plus things. If something doesn't feel as professional, even if it's nicely done, we're not going to score it as high. Provide context. So for example, my favorite, if it's a billboard entry, put it in a billboard. Put it in a photo of a billboard so that we see how it's being used. If it's a t-shirt and you're just giving us on a printed piece of paper what the t-shirt design was, that doesn't do as well as if you even give us a photo of someone wearing the t-shirt. So give us context like that. That makes a bigger impression. Think about how your clients react to that. The judges react to it the same way. If it's a complex item, photograph it. Give us a photo. If nothing else, at least attach the photo to your entry. So like if you've got this whole set of beer labels and you've done all these beer bottles and there's like 12 beer bottles to it, and you want a photo's a lot easier to judge and to set out. So give us something like that. Now you can give us both, but just make sure that we've got a way to easily look at it, because remember, we don't want to get confused. We want to make sure we're judging accurately. Assume nothing. Keep in mind that, oh, they'll get this. No, we probably won't. So make sure that everything is clear as far as what you're entering. And as I mentioned before, provide a written or digital summary where allowed. It's allowed in several areas. Definitely take advantage of that. All right, a couple more things. Here's how to increase your odds of winning. Play the numbers, enter more. That should be simple, but if you enter 2, you might not win anything. If you enter 8, you might still not win anything, but you got a better shot of winning something. So play the numbers. I worked at a place where he said, well, if we enter 8 things, I expect to win at least 6. I told him he was stupid for thinking that, but okay. The thing is, you've heard the numbers. It's about 1 in 5. So if you want better chance of winning, some people go, well, we'll just enter 1 thing or 2 things. No, enter 5, 6, 7, enter 10. Enter more things and you got better chances of winning something, because you never know what the judges are going to respond to. Don't assume your favorite piece will win, because that might not be what the judges respond to. So give yourself more opportunities. Also, enter individual things in multiple categories. I mean, if you're doing a photo series, for example, enter a single photo in the single photo. Enter the campaign. You know, if it's part of an ad, enter the ad. You know, there's a friend of mine who wins, if anyone's heard of Whiskey Design, they win, we'll give out 80 golds in Kansas City, and he will win 10 to 11 of them. But it's usually for about 3 or 4 projects, but he enters pieces of them in different campaigns. So, you know, if you're doing a big integrated thing, enter the website as well in the website category. Enter the billboard in the billboard category. You know, don't just enter the one thing. Enter it in multiple campaigns, because if the judges like it, you're not just getting 1 award, you might be getting 3 or 4 awards for it. And who doesn't want 3 or 4 awards instead of just 1? All right. All right. Even if you don't win, go to the show to study the winners. I think a lot of people aren't aware of what it takes to win. And so many times when you go to a show and you see what the winners are, you're like, oh, no wonder we didn't win. I mean, I remember when I got to my last job before I started my own place, the creatives thought they were the best creatives in the world. And so I let them enter a dozen pieces. They didn't win a thing. So of course, what did they think? Stupid judges. We should have won an ADDY. Then I made them all go to the show and they saw what won. And they all went, oh, we need to step up our game. So a lot of times it helps to see what's winning, what judges are responding to. That'll help you win if you know what you're up against. I don't know if you guys do this, volunteer for judging weekend. So you see all the work that's out there, and then you can overhear what the judges are talking about too. Key thing is you're just not allowed to talk to the judges. You can make eye contact, but you can't talk to them. And before you enter anything, seek unbiased feedback. Don't ask your spouse. Don't ask your best friend. ask the person who's always kind of a jerk about things, because they're going to give you unbiased feedback. If you want positive reinforcement on it, show your mom, but you're not going to win an award. So make sure you ask for other people, hey, what do you think of this? And if I didn't mention this before, forward your silver winners onto district, forward your district silver winners onto national. So now, any comments, questions, grief you want to give me? Because yeah, we still got like 10 minutes for questions. Yeah, Tom.
Video is always judged harshly.
Yeah, I would agree.
Could you discuss that?
Yeah, okay. So Tom said, and part of it is I'm doing it for the camera as well, so don't think I just like to repeat questions. Tom was saying video is always judged harshly. Could you respond to that? And one, I would say I agree. Video does get judged harshly. The interesting thing is when you get to nationals, most of the winners are video. So I think video, there's still a pretty big gap in execution and what can be done. And I think that judges have a tendency to, I would say, when I break it down, I don't want to say we're easier on print, but we have a tendency to score print higher, score broadcast lower, and then interactive gets somewhere in the middle. And I mean, that's pretty standard. I see that in any judging that we do. As far as video goes, it is, the best thing you can do actually at the local level for video is to break up when they're viewing video. Because I've had judging where I'm thrown in a room for 4 hours and all I do is watch video and listen to radio. Well, I'm in a dark room for 4 hours watching TV. After a while, your scoring starts to go down, you start to get a little harsher. The best thing you can do for video is to break it up in judging. Judge it in half-hour, 45-minute increments, let them go do some print. Then they come back and do some video. So that's really on what you do locally. So break it up so they're not seeing all the video or listening to all the radio at once, because you get tired of it. And then when you start seeing repeats of things, you're like, skip it, let's go to the next thing. And that's truly what happens. It's in how it's shown. Do you guys break it up, or do you do it as one big?
Last year we did it as one, but we only had about an hour of video, and we had no radio last year.
Oh, okay. Well, if you have an hour of video, that actually does.
So, but I mean, the room is cold. I will say, Meredith, it's cold. The judges get crabby.
Yeah, we're babies. We're big babies.
But last year we were judging all in one day. So they start about 9 a.m. and we're done by 3.
Okay. It still wouldn't hurt to do like half an hour of video, let them go do something, then another half hour of video, because you can think about when you're watching TV how you fast forward through commercials. You're making them sit through an hour of basically commercials. So break it up, and I think you'll find that helps the scoring. Does that help, Tom? Yeah. Okay. What other questions do we have? I can make something up. No? Yes?
What are the kind of trends you're looking for in web? And
Ask, I'm sorry?
what are the trends you're looking for in the web when you're judging? And then are you really seeing all the interactive things that we put in those sites or not?
Yeah, it depends on how easy it is for us to get through it, which is part of the judging process. So she asked, what are the trends we're seeing in interactive, and are we really looking at everything? And that's a fair question. We are really looking at everything if we have a good experience when we first start. It's no different than broadcast or print. If when we get to the home, like let's say we're just starting at a home page, for example, if the home page makes us go, meh, we're going to jump around real quick and we're going to jump out. If the home page engages us, or our landing page engages us, then we're going to spend a lot more time in it. So it's like most other pieces. It's got to make an impression on us right away because we've got a limited amount of time. So we figure if someone didn't take care of the landing page well, they probably didn't do the rest of the site well. As far as trends go, you know what? We're just looking for something we haven't seen. We're looking for something where it's more, oh, I never thought to do it that way. Obviously, it's got to be responsive. That's one of the first things we check. And it can't be a WordPress site. I mean, unless it's completely designed, because we pick up templates. The second we see a template, we're like, no, 20. We'll give it a low score. But You know, we are looking at do we want to spend time on the website, and that determines how far we get into it. Other questions? Does that answer your question, by the way? Okay. Other questions? Yeah, Tom.
What would you recommend to an agency or an organization who's hesitant to apply into the ADDYs or submit their work, whether it's due to past judging experiences or they just aren't sure what they want to submit?
You know what? One of the things you can do too is if you've got a committee member who's willing to go in there and help them go through their work and say, because that's something we'll do, is that we'll say, hey, we'll help you go through things if you want to determine what might be a good fit, what might be a good category. That's especially good in an agency or a firm that hasn't done it before. You know, to go in and help them do that kind of thing. If they've had bad experiences with judging before, you know what? It's a different set of judges every time. Now, if they've consistently had bad experience with judges, it's not the judges. Let's be honest, it's not. Do better work. That's usually what gets me in trouble when I say that, by the way. So I try not to say it with quite that attitude. But, you know, you can tell them, hey, we've got a different set of judges. You know, if they haven't done it in a few years, try it again. Here's what we're doing. Here's what our judges are doing different. Here's how the rules have been rewritten. Here's the new categories. Because there's a lot of new categories we added just a couple of years ago, where now branding is actually a section within there. So for example, if they were more branding, they might have only been able to do logo and something else. Well, now they can put together a whole branding thing. So show them the things that have changed about the categories, show them things that have changed about the rules, and then go from there. Other questions? Laura?
So in Kansas City, you talked about there's a couple agencies that usually do pretty well.
Uh-huh.
They go into it with a thought process of winning. So they have a formula that they kind of follow.
Uh-huh.
Are you able to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Laura was asking that. I was talking about in Kansas City, there's a couple agencies that win a lot because they have a formula they follow. I think it's more that they have learned over time, just through trial and error, what works and what people are responding to. They're watching what the winners are. But I'd say I'm thinking of two that win quite a bit. One's the largest agency, and one's Whiskey Design that I told you about. They'll win about 10. That's 4 people. And that's in the Kansas City market. It's pretty impressive. But part of what their strategy is that they, you know, one, they look at what has won before. What do we want to try to achieve? But then the other is that they enter a lot too. We have one agency, I mean, I said we get about 1,000. The largest agency, they enter like 100 things. So part of it is they play the numbers as well. And the big thing that I would say both do that makes them the winners is that in each category where they can give an explanation or a video explanation, they take advantage of that. That makes a big, big difference in how the judges respond, because then the judges aren't just judging creativity. We are allowed to look at what were the results, what was the strategy, and what are some of the other things. And when judges have that information, even though we're judging creativity, that makes a huge difference in how we score something. I would say when you're looking at our best of show winners and our best ofs, like it's best of design, best of whatever, in almost all those cases, it's because we have a summary in some way that tells us something about it, so we know more than just what's sitting right in front of us.
Just one thing to expand on is that video summary.
Uh-huh.
Seem to be highly produced for some of those.
Yeah, you can do a video summary, and I think the limit is 3 minutes. Usually those are used, and it's very specific ones that allow you to do that. It's the integrated ones. It's like guerrilla marketing, the things you can't really, like you obviously wouldn't do a video summary of a brochure, you know. You could, I wouldn't do it. But you know, some of the things where you need to explain more. So a lot of times those are highly produced. I mean, they will work with someone to get those done. And you'll be amazed, because a lot of times that video summary, like in Kansas City, that's what we'll show when we're showing them as a winner, because it explains the whole story, and it makes it a much more impressive story and much more impressive results. Other questions? Still got a few? Yes, this is natural. I would not do this on purpose. Let's see, what other questions can I answer? Does that take care of everything? All right, well, first, I want to thank Jenna for being here and for them being a sponsor. Say that, yeah, Andy screwed me up earlier when he said it. M&I, so M&I, thank you very much for being a sponsor. I appreciate you being here, Jenna. I appreciate you all coming out on the last day of November, because I know this time gets pretty crazy. So I'll stick around if anyone's got specific questions they want to ask, but thank you very much.